Hey there, this is R.A. Manard, Mitrava, giving you the weekly truth talk by way of Monks of the Way in Phoenix. And I've gone ahead and started at 7 o'clock Arizona time, and I will give it a couple of minutes for whomever might choose to show up will show up. All of those people. Anyway, this, of course, is the altar in the temple room of my house, and it's not a fancy statue, but I like it. Not really a fancy tapestry, but I like it. There are no bullet points, there's no script. It's just me talking about the truth. And of course, that is by way of quite often the teachings of Buddha. I reference them normally during these talks. I ran out of things outside that I wanted to look at anyway. I suppose I'll have some more outside ones later, maybe as things change a little bit. Today's topic is evil. What does Alan know about evil? Tell you what, while I'm waiting for whomever might want to be here for this to make sure everybody can be here, I'll let you know a little about my bio, because my bio's not out there right now. So while I'm waiting for people, I'll give you a little bit of bio. You might say, RA, how have you come to know the truth? I mean, I know the truth. How do you know it? How do you know so much more of it than I do? What's up with that? How's that even possible? We're both people. Maybe we're even the same age. Maybe I'm even older. Or rather, maybe you're even older than me. Well, let me tell you, it's pretty interesting. I had a lot of time growing up and spent most of it over at my grandparents'. So I went to church a lot because my grandmother went to church a lot. And subsequently, I did go to church on Sunday with them. So I was exposed to a lot of Christian teachings, which are, of course, supposed to be the truth. And don't get offended because I said supposed to be. There's plenty of truth there to be had. What I'm saying is be skeptical. In any event, I heard these things, and some of them seemed to be conflicting, and some of them didn't make any sense to me. Not that I didn't have the intellect for it, just that it didn't make sense. So I went to the pastor, and he was very afraid to speak with me. Uh, Certainly didn't want to speak with me alone, for fear that somebody might think something. And anyway, I kept asking him questions. Okay, and why do you think that? Okay, and why do you think that? To what he was saying. And to get to the meat of it, what does he know? How does he know this stuff is true? And pretty much all of my questions ended with, you know what? I don't know. I don't know if anybody knows. I guess you just have to believe it. So that didn't impress me very much. But I spent some time getting to know the pastor and getting to know why he thinks the way he does. And then there's this segment of my life where I got hormones and things went a little off track. I went to live with my father in a different state, and then was still curious, of course, looking at the different religions that were there, and I came upon a Wiccan. And she was a high priestess, and I was very impressed with how knowledgeable she was. I was impressed with the way she lived. I was impressed with her knowledge of arcana, of different texts, of different truths, although she didn't really phrase it that way. So I studied with her for years, and then I went to actually live in the home of a medicine man after that. And I worked for him, and I lived in his house and his wives, and I studied with him for years. After that, I went ahead and I moved again, and I came upon a person who went through the Roman Catholic seminary and was supposed to get ordained. And a week earlier than that, he said, "You know what? It's not for me." And he took off. So I studied with him for years. Now, there's other people that I studied with. There was a Zen master, there was a preacher, and let's see, there were various people. There were even some of them that didn't hold those titles, like medicine man, pastor, preacher, high priestess, whatever. But they knew things, or they thought they knew things. But we were able to talk together and find things out. Oh, it's 7 minutes after. I probably should have already started. Shouldn't have gone down this bio road after all, probably. Well, anyway, other people of my age have had children, even grandchildren. They've owned houses. They've had careers. And I never really had any of that because I was always so focused on needing to know pretty much everything I could know. And the topics that I've researched are very far and wide. And I actually have a soft spot for science because it appears to me that Buddha created the scientific method. Anyway, the topic for today is evil. And do I know evil? I know evil. I know evil because I've seen it. I've even participated in it. And it's real. Now, let's make a distinction though. There's evil as in the evil one, and there's evil as in you're doing something evil. And saying you're doing something evil most of the time is probably an overstatement, going over the top. Sometimes it's not. So let's talk about these things. First of all, the evil one. Is there an evil one? Sure. Humans make hierarchies. It's just natural. It's what they do. Other beings, guess what? They make hierarchies. It's natural. It's what they do. You'd have to go all the way to the gods before you can't build any hierarchies because what would gods build a hierarchy out of? Nothing. Nobody can tell a god what to do, even another god. In any event, the evil one. Is there an evil one? Sure there is. For the matter of discerning whether it's the evil one or a representative thereof, acting on behalf of kind of thing, does it matter, really? Does it matter if it's an evil one or the evil one? I don't think so. Discerning such things doesn't make any sense. You'll find that in the teachings of Buddha, which are way before uh, pretty much all the teachings of any evil one, except for, well, there's Ahura Mazda, and no, let's not go there. Sumerian, let's say. There's even in cuneiform, there's two brothers, and one of them's supposed to be evil, and one of them's good. So it's not really the evil one like we would know, like a hierarchy. But anyway, in what Buddha taught, the evil one generally shows up when someone's about to make a breakthrough, when someone's about to make a breakthrough with other people. And anybody who knows evil can see evil. They might not say it, they might not show it at all, but they can see it. And if Buddha says you have to learn to notice evil, you have to learn to notice when someone's being directed by evil, to notice what is an evil thing, to notice what leads to evil, what cultivates it, what perpetuates it. And I think we would all do well to listen to that. For instance, there's the story of the sister, the treasured sister, and she does her dailies. She goes out, she collects alms, she talks to people, she gets home to the monastery, she eats, she goes out for the rest of the day to meditate. And she goes to this grove to be all alone in the woods, and she hears a voice, and it's asking her, as she gets ready, as she starts meditating, uh, who are you? Where do you come from? Where's your creator? All these questions like this, and she doesn't know what to do. She's flabbergasted, and she asks herself, wait a second, nobody's around here. Is this a person talking or not a person? She realizes that this must be the evil one. And so she answers, saying back to him basically what she'd heard of Buddha say of these teachings, that it doesn't matter. Do you really take an option on this, that there is or isn't even a self? It's a bunch of fabrication. You can't have anything fact-based on that. It's delusion. It's a practice in delusion either way. It's not worth arguing. We don't know these questions you're talking about. We do know where suffering arises. We do know its cause. We know that it fades, it goes away. We know these things. And basically, having been outed for being the evil one is like, oh, she knows me, she's got me, and he's gone instantly. So actual evil, when confronted with how ridiculous it is, vanishes, because it will not stand there and be made a fool of. That's one of the things to remember about evil. It's got pride, if nothing else. There's another kind of evil, which is an evil action. Now, I won't quote the particular sutta where these things are, but they're sutta, which means they're in the Pali Canon, the things that I'm talking about here. And in particular, there's one where he talks about a trifling evil thing that can land you in hell, or an over-the-top thing that makes almost no problems. He says there's a difference between these things: a trifling evil thing, a big evil thing, sure, but there's a difference in you, and that's important. So let's take the case of a person who goes to jail for $50, and a person who goes to jail for $1, and a person who goes to jail for $100. That happens in one way or another. I'm not saying 50 cents is the charge. Anyway, ends up going to jail. We could change the amounts up to $1,000. It really wouldn't matter. And certainly people have gone to jail for owing money. Particularly, I want to mention what he said here, though, which is now there's a person who doesn't go to jail for half a dollar, for a dollar, for $100. Now, what's the difference between these two people? The person that goes to jail for half a dollar, for a dollar, for $100, that person is poor. That person doesn't have means. They don't have the high education. They don't have the opportunity to make more of themselves. They don't cultivate all this stuff. They have nothing. What kind of person doesn't go to jail for that? Well, that's the person who's rich. They're wealthy. They have the opportunity. They have the means. They have all these possessions. They don't go to jail for that. I think we know that. I I think we know that rich people don't go to jail for a lot of things that poor people do. But it's not about going to jail, of course. It's about landing yourself in a hell of your own creation, in life or after life. In life is what I would be focused on. You could argue there's nothing after life. So what? Cultivating what's good in yourself, it's going to pay off, obviously. We don't even need to talk about karma. That's another talk. Anyway, there's another place where Buddha mentions the evil one. And it's funny because he doesn't miss a beat. There's the evil one, and he wants to mess with Buddha. Bad idea. Never mess with an enlightened one. Anyway, he disguises himself. He makes himself into a farmer. And he's got a goat stick, and he walks down the road, and he sees Buddha there. He walks over to him and goes, have you seen my oxen around here? Any of them? Buddha doesn't miss a beat and says, and what are your oxen, evil one? So, he didn't skip a beat there. Well, remember what I said about evil, not wanting to be made a fool of. So, the evil one answers, well, these things are mine. He goes, these things you see, these things you hear, these things you think, these things you feel, the body, basically the things that touch the six senses. These six senses, they're mine. He goes, you can't get away from me. So, knowing the teachings of Buddha, as some of you might, what do you think Buddha replies? Well, he's not prideful, so it's not one of those deals. He goes, well, you're right. He goes, those things are yours. Basically, the things that strike the senses. And consciousness is one of them, he says, that's attached to thought. And he says those things are yours. Forms and thoughts, images, you can have them. So I think the devil's at this point, or the evil one, is pretty happy with himself. He says, so there you go. You can't get away from me. And so Buddha once again doesn't skip a beat. And he says, well, what I'm talking about is the truth. I don't own the truth. I don't I don't say the words that are the truth, point to the truth instead. Uh, so this level of consciousness beyond thought, beyond sight, beyond the body, that's where I am. And what do you say? Oh, yeah. It was, how do you put it? It was something along the lines of, when I go, you won't even see my tracks. Well, I thought it was pretty poetic. Anyway, there's many examples that Buddha gives about evil. And when we talk about the evil act, it's important to note that he says that a little evil is not a good thing and should not be accepted. I use terms like mental and spiritual hygiene to keep those things up. That you don't fill your mind with trash. You don't participate in the thinking of trash knowingly as a habit, because that's bad mental hygiene. Spiritually, you don't do things that make you feel dirty on a regular basis. You just don't do it. It's a matter of spiritual hygiene. And Buddha's known to say things like, you think a little bit doesn't matter, but drop by drop, the bucket, the barrel can fill, and pretty soon you've got a barrel of water, and that's a lot of water. So how it gets filled doesn't have to be in big torrents. It can be drop by drop. But we've all got a finite amount of room to work with. The room we've got to work with is not infinite. You can't keep doing evil and not become evil. But the good news is you can't keep doing good and not become good. It's the way it works. So have some hygiene. Not just your body, but also your mind and also your spiritual needs. And we can do this pretty easily if we pay attention. So once again, we're talking about being aware of the now and living in it. You have to remember the past. You have to look forward to the future, but where you should be dwelling is now. What am I doing? And it'll change as you go. As you become more aware, more present, and things change for you, your perspective will change. Your perspective is not necessarily truth. Your perspective is not necessarily reality. It's important to note that. Everybody has experience with having your perspective be a certain way, and then you reach the turning point and you're like, oh, guess what? I was completely wrong on that. Completely wrong. Nothing I thought about it was true. Now I know the truth, you say to yourself. Maybe you don't. Maybe you still don't know anything. It might be true. So stay open. Stay open to being wrong and keep your hygiene up as best you can. I like to give examples of small things like stealing a pen from the bank, or bringing office supplies home, or, I'm sure you can think of a lot of small things. And you think, well, this is small. It doesn't matter. But you're desensitizing yourself to feeling bad about these things. And you're increasing your level of acceptedness for these things. And you are conditioning your mind to go along with these sorts of things. So you're cultivating. You're cultivating evil. It's a small evil, but you know it's an evil. Have some hygiene. Cut it off right there. As far as the evil one, or representative thereof, whatever, What protection do we have there? Well, let's talk once again about the guy that doesn't go to jail. I mean, the person that gets drawn into, suckered into going along with some of the influence of the evil one is not someone who has built up a lot of wealth of truth in their life, by and large. Can it happen? Sure. Can a wise person get tricked? Absolutely. But I'm talking about going the whole length, about participating in something or bringing themselves to something that is evil and doing it intentionally and doing it happily even. So there's a there's differences in evil, and the evil one will always take joy in doing evil, and the evil one will always take joy in taking happiness away. And we find this in people too, because evil is evil. People that are doing evil and whom most people would call evil people, they're not evil people, they're just lost. But these sorts of people, they take joy in doing these things, in bringing these things. They do it intentionally, they do it habitually, they cultivate, like I've said. They have the opposite hygiene that they're after. And of course, it leads to ruin. Of course, it leads to more and more suffering. And there's a breaking point. Once again, we don't have infinite room to deal with here. Something's got to give. And it's us. It's not the universe that's going to break down, it's us. Believe me, you. Anyway, as far as worrying about the evil one or representatives thereof, there's no cause for that. There's no cause for that. By and large, a person lives in the thing that they build for themselves in life, their life. And so, worrying about outside interference, you know, at the right time, evil shows up. The right time for it, that is. When you're about to make a breakthrough, when something's going to really change, you have to learn to see it. See the evil for what it is. It's pretty tricky sometimes. You got to stay awake. And you might say to yourself lots of times before you learn to really see it, is that evil or am I just being weird here? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. You haven't been able to confirm. Okay, just go ahead and hope for the best and prepare for the worst. And that's good advice anyway, isn't it? First, I'm not saying it's hopeless, right? I'm not saying don't ever trust anybody. I'm not saying everything is always going to go to crap. I'm saying hope for the best. But I am following it up with prepare for the worst. Because the worst can happen. You don't need to know that there's a likelihood of it happening. It can just happen. It can strike, and everybody should know this. We know the way the universe works. We know how things work in society. We know how things work in our lives. We all have firsthand experience with both good and evil. And I'm not polarizing this and saying everything is good or evil. Everything is the truth or a lie. Because the best lies have some truth in them. And some of the best truths that you'll encounter have a little bit of delusion in them. you have to be able to pick it apart. You have to be able to figure things out for yourself. And I'm here to tell you, though, if you haven't studied evil, then you're not safe from being tricked like someone who has. You should know how it works. You should know what it tastes like. You should know what it looks like. You should know what it feels like. I'm sure you've been had by something that you're pretty sure was evil before, and you had a weird feeling about it. It didn't feel right. The feeling that there's a poisonous snake in the room, but you haven't seen it, or your hair stands up, or you're like, wait a second, you can't put your finger on it, but this is how I felt before I totally got bushwhacked last time. So pay attention if that happens. And there are lots of things I've learned about evil that just aren't productive to share like this. But there's some things that are, and I only have a short time, and I've already gone over too much. I want to make these videos 15 to 20 minutes so that they're more digestible for people. These younger people especially don't want to listen to a half-hour video, so I'm trying to keep them shorter. I guess I'll sign off unless there's any questions. I'll give it a minute because sometimes it takes a minute for things people type in to come up here. I've certainly got a few minutes for a question. Don't feel bad about asking. Okay. Basically, I'm seeing that the question says, are there demons? Well, and they say they thought they've had some dealing with a representative of evil. And sure, you might have. It could be. Like I've said with those things that, well, first I should say yes, representatives of evil are real. As far as demons, like a disembodied being, absolutely. And people pass on. And there's a debate. After they pass on, are they human? They don't have a human body. They don't have the human sight, the human hearing, the human touch, and so on and so forth, the human thinking. So what are they then? Are if they work for the agency of good, the host of heaven, are they an angel? Maybe. Now, if they work for the agency of evil, are they a demon? Maybe. What? Sorry. What do you call something that doesn't have a human body or can take on a human body but really doesn't belong to that body? What do you call something that urges people's thinking in the wrong way? Pardon me. Let me get a drink of water. I think you'd call it a demon. As for having experiences with them, if you think you have, you probably have. Now, I don't want you to go off the handle, though, and go, okay, now the opinions I've formed, my perspective, my emotions about this, that's reality. It might not be reality. Like I said before, I'm not talking about absolutes here. Something's just true or it's just false. It's just good or it's just evil. There's a lot in between and a lot of mixed up stuff. So discern for yourself. Have a firm footing in what you know is true, but also have faith in that and stretch a little bit to believe some things you don't have any proof of. Sure, as long as those things don't get in your way once again, then they're absolutely fine. A person might believe they were a, let's say, prominent monk in another life. What does this bring to the table? Well, if they think people should listen to them because of that, or think they're smart or wise or do what they say or anything like that, then obviously it's getting in their way. I would say then that, either it's not true or it's not even worth being true. What if it inspires this person to be a good person, to be a good role model, to cultivate truth, to share what they find? Well, then I'd say either it's true or it's worth being true. I hope you see what I'm saying there. Is there more questions? I'll give it a minute because sometimes it takes a minute or two for the stuff to come through the internet. Not sure if that has to do with Facebook or my internet provider or both, but it certainly happens that way. All right. Well, I want to thank you for your attendance, and I will go ahead and keep doing this. Last week, I had a problem with the microphone and it didn't record any audio. So I will at some point be doing a talk about debating truth and talking about how Buddha debated truth. I don't know if that's going to be next week. I kind of just do what topic feels right and talk about the things Buddha said in the Pali Canon that talk about this. And so, not everything I say is directly from Buddha, of course, but as far as it being of the teachings of Buddha, I think pretty much it is. If you don't think so, once again, debate it with me. Let's see if it's true. I could be wrong. I'm willing to be wrong. I'm actually pleased to be wrong a lot of times. That's the best thing that can happen, is to find out you've been mistaken and learn the truth. Best thing ever. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. I wish the best of life for every single one of you. And I will talk to you again soon. This is R.A. Manard for Monks of the Way. Thank you.